Yo, yo, my sovereigns, what up? This is Boba Fett, uncensored on the internet. And welcome to the second part of my Melbourne to Guadalajara, Mexico travel blog. In this episode, we will be looking around the Sacred Valley area of Cusco. So nestled in the Sacred Valley at the very heart is Urubamba, which is where I stayed for a couple of weeks with my friend Andy and his family. He's actually from Leeds in England, but he was the tour organizer of the tour group I went on in 2015 to Peru, and he lives now. He's been living in Peru for about 15 years, I think, he has a Peruvian partner and a young boy. So he's like officially expat, I guess you could say, works from home. So the digital nomad life. So it was great just to spend a couple of weeks at his house there in Urubamba. And because it's central to the Sacred Valley, it's just a short trip in a collectivo, 45 to an hour, one way for Pisac or the other way for Ayante Tambo. And Ayante Tambo will be the next video. This one though, Urubamba and Pisac. Now, there's a lot of photos in this edition, so I'm not going to be uploading all of the photos to the blog. So if there is a photo that you see in this video and you'd like a copy of that photo, either hit me up on Discord, Boba Fett, or comment on the Hive post and I will reply with the photo. Just mention the time index on the video where the photo appears and what the photo is of, and I will send it to you. So let's start. All right, in Latin America, every town has its like central plaza area. The big ones usually the Plaza de Armas, and out in Urubamba, being a small town, they have a small plaza. And in this one here, you can see in the background the great old Tartarian architecture style there. We have a close-up of that in a sec. But this is really interesting here, the pineal cone that you see a lot in places, and the pigeons absolutely loving it there. So here I am just sitting on a park bench looking in the direction of the old world building and the central fountain. Fountains are like when you see like the big building, there's always like a alleyway and then a fountain, very, very typical of Tartarian architecture. And here it is. This is the building we were looking at from a distance. Looks like it's been modified, repaired a few times, maybe even some pieces missing from the original architecture. Still has its bells though. Quite often the bells have been replaced when you look at the style architecture. But if you look at the brickwork or the stonework, you can see it. There's been a few repair jobs done on this, and there's a couple of things missing too that have been taken out. And again, big door, little doors cut in for our sized peoples, but the door for bigger people and the door knockers right up out of range of us, I guess you could say. And this is the same. Now I'm actually on the steps of that building, looking back in the direction that I took the first photo from, usually around the plaza. And plaza just simply is square. So not plaza like shopping mall or something like that. Plaza is simply square, the town square, town center. Cafes, restaurants all around the outside. And this was on a weekend. I can't remember if it was a Saturday or Sunday, but the weekend markets, again, a very common and popular site in these towns. Close up of another building. Now this one's been plastered, I guess, for some sort of facade. A lot of stuff missing from it, or it could even be a modern construction. If you look at the line here, you can see underneath the original stonework construction. So maybe it was completely destroyed or something, and they've just built this section on top of it. Hard to tell, but again, fountain feature. No longer used as a fountain, but clearly was at some point. Okay, now we're going on a little walk from Andy's house to the local corner shop. So when we leave his house, come out the gate, this is the pathway, goes along. See, like, this is Inca style construction, not old world style construction, but the waterway that runs along the side, the water features, when you see Ollantay Tambo and some of the photos later here in Pisac, water features play a huge part of the old world architecture. And this is like monolithic style stonework here that run along these, not the more recent style stonework. And every now and then this will disappear, there'll be some paving over it, but it does continue underground, and these systems still work today, bringing water down from the mountains. And like, it's incredible that these things were built when they were built, still work today, transporting water. So as we're walking further along, still we can see the same style architecture. Nice shot of the mountains in the background with the clouds, and just heading down the street to the shop. Here's a shot of the street, nice mountain shot in the background. Again, the more recent Inca style construction, and even more recent adobe mud brick type construction, and the nowadays construction that you see with the large bricks. Any new construction you see in the area, this is the type of stonework that is done with it. Another shot, the adobe mud fencing, modern construction materials, and beautiful shot of the mountains there in the background. Dogs are a very, very common sight all through Latin America. El perro, the little tiendas, little stores that basically, a home that has become a store. You see hundreds of these little supermarkets throughout the place as well. And now moving on to the Pisac part of the episode. And as I mentioned, Pisac is just like a 45-minute ride in a collectivo from Urubamba. And beginning off with the hat that I bought in Pisac, and with the Andean style band there. And I just happened to be wearing my Kathmandu shirt as well. It's just pure coincidental that this hat matched the shirt so well. So let's have a look at Pisac. So from the town square, looking up into the mountains, obvious straight away, all of the terracing all over the place. Just a close-up of some of the local buildings, and again, terracing everywhere. Now here we are at the start of the Pisac Trail. There's two ways you can do the Pisac Trail. You can start in town and walk up to the top, or you catch a taxi. Taxi's probably about a 15-minute trip, maybe 20 minutes to the top of this site, and then you work your way down. Although initially from where you start, there is quite an uphill. So you can just see the corner here of the concrete slab. This is like where the official archaeological site trek or hike begins. And you can see the footpath here along the right. Here, winds up, goes up and up. We will actually be going through these ruins, up and up, and then down the other side and taking the trip into town. Now, if you have a look at this terracing here, or steps, or whatever they are, big people steps or terracing, there's a shot that I take from, I think it's around here somewhere, looking back in this direction. And also, while we're hiking through this, bear in mind, we are currently at an altitude of 2,900 meters above sea level. Here's another shot. This is the part we were just looking at here. This is just a wider shot of the whole area. Small towns in the background here. And it's Pisac in the distance here. And you can see the trails winding around. Just make out a little bit of a ancient ruins up there, which we'll be passing through on this trek. And in the terracing, see these little steps here? These steps are actually built into the wall. So like if you've got facing stones here, then you've got a big slab. The slab's actually dug into, so it's actually part of the construction. As you can see here, these big rocks actually go into the wall. So you have like big people steps and little people steps, and of course little people being us. And just a pan out of that area that you can just make out the steps here and here. And we're off. So that shot I showed you from where we started, with the ruin at the top of the hill, that is that, a little bit clearer. And if you look at the stonework, you can see this is Inca period. It's not the monolithic old world style construction. And we will be passing up through this area. And you can see the steps down through here. And again, some of the old construction. But here is interesting. We can see the remnants of what used to be with the old world style polygonal megalithic constructions of the blocks. Obviously something's happened at some point in time, and the majority of what's left of what this used to be is now the smaller stonework, probably Inca period repair work. Close up there of the shots, see what I mean by the polygonal shaping and the fitting in. Another unique characteristic of this architecture is the fact that there's no mortar. They just fit in perfectly. And you can see the growth on these stones. I can't remember the exact name off the top of my head, but this growth is datable, being of organic in matter, and the growth rate is known. So by looking at the sheer amount of growth on these stones, it's a clear indication of actually how old the original construction is compared to the more modern Inca style construction. Another shot there of the stonework, a close up. As you can see, like these things fit perfectly in together, and no mortar is required in the construction of these. So, and in archaeology, in dating, it's like a common given that in stratigraphic layering, that the bottom is the oldest layer in the stratigraphy. The bottom is the oldest, and of course, as construction continues over the time, the top is the newest. And what's always interesting in these old world style constructions is the older stratigraphic, having trouble with the tongue and lips today. The stratigraphic layering, the older the construction, the more advanced the technology of the construction. So moving further along through this construction, the archway here, as you can see, old world construction, and then up the top here, some repair work that's done. So old world construction here, and then modern repair work of clearly of a less superior quality. And you can see the attempt at mimicry here. There's no mortar, so they're using like some polygonal shaping. There's no mortar at this point. Mortar comes in later on with the more recent style of construction, but an attempt clearly by the peoples of this era to duplicate the old world architecture, but obviously not to the same degree of quality. So a close up on that shot there. This is the other side of the archway we just looked at. So looking through here, this is the direction we've just come from. See a little bit of melted rock here on the side, like something's like obliterated, and just this rock is just melted into a mass. But you can see here some of the steps that probably at some point came all the way down, but now it's just a melted, molten mess. An alcove here, something probably fitted in there, and you can just see here the circular, that's actually an inset as well going down, so something was probably in there as part ornamental or operational, technological, who knows. And again, the lintel piece here, old style. Oh, there we go, there we've got a close-up of the little insert there in the stonework. And moving further along the trail, again, more recent, probably when you compare like this, I think period is actually still pre-Incan, and as they're still using the polygonal shapes, no mortar, but clearly an inferior level of technological ability than the massive old world works. Little shot here, you can see in the distance, like showing its age. Some of the track is just not safe to pass anymore, so it's been cleared off. And there's plenty of paths around, so it's not like they have to create a new path, but they've just blocked this one off because I'm guessing it's just too unsafe. All right, so here we are now at the very beginning when I mentioned we're looking across this terracing region and we're going to be on the other side. We're now on the other side and we're looking back at where we started. So where you see these little huts here, these are like day markets, and this is the entranceway at the top of the ruins. So this is where the first photo was taken from. So we're now looking at this region from the other side. So we've actually walked all the way along this path here. And a reminder again, altitude 2,900 meters, beautiful scenery in the background here. And a little shot down at the town. So again, in the first one, if you remember, that was off in this direction. Now we're sort of parallel to this little town in the bottom of the valley. Some old world ruins around us here also. Just another shot. All right, so here's the path that we're actually taking. As I mentioned, where we started, there's initially a lot of uphill to get to the top of this part of the mountain. Then we start working our way down to the bottom of the valley and the town of Pisac. And again, you can see the sheer age of where on these stone steps. This is original work. This is not modern construction. And as you can see, it's all uphill and takes a bit of a beating out of you, especially at that altitude. This is a short little video clip I'm going to play in a moment when we get to it that I took. It's only like a minute or two, and you can see how out of breath I was. It's a little shot of someone's built a little town type thing here. Tower, I should say. And just a close-up of some modern housing. I mean, can you imagine living up here? It'd be absolutely incredible. And you look at how nature has just taken over this original wall here. Again, indications of the age. And whatever's happened here through cataclysm or plasma events, whatever, this was originally, you can see, a stone wall, and it's just been reduced now to melted masses. This is a shot taken from the other side, taken of the other side of the valley. And this is already zoomed in. You can see like little caves, little cuts. So whether these are cut-ins or whether these were rooms, an original massive, large construction that's, again, just been obliterated through some sort of plasma heat event. And all that's left now is like little cave constructions. But if you're looking like, why would you build little caves like this when it's virtually impossible to get to? So these look like the remnants of rooms in a very large building. That you look at this rock work here, this was actually at some point a massive building. Tartarian researchers and lovers would understand this. Okay, there's a shot that's not quite that's not zoomed out, so just get an indication here of the sheer size and complexity of what's going on here, and what this appeared like the cliff edge here. This would have been like the facing of an incredibly large building at some point in the past. All right, so this is the video that I was telling you about.
Well, I was going to be vlogging today, but since I can barely talk, this is just going to be a snippet. Oh my god, what a walk. What a walk.
You can clearly see how out of breath I was, because we're still on the uphill part of this journey. And this shot is also looking back over here at the starting point. This is the other side of that terracing we looked at. It had little steps in it, and we're looking down now on this, as you can see. So we're pretty much at the top of the uphill battle of this hike, and soon we'll be beginning the downhill part. From the top here, looking across, again, you can see the town down in the bottom here, and the sheer ruggedness of the terrain. You can see the multi levels of terracing on the other side of the valley. So we're at the top of one part of the side of the valley. That's the actual bottom of the valley, the sacred valley, Pisac. And you can't quite make it out, but this is actually a river flowing through the town here. As we're passing along the trail, we come to this little cave section. So we actually pass down through this and out to the other side. Steps going down. So I mentioned we've reached the peak of the summit. We're now starting to work our way down through the valley, but the pathway here actually goes through the rocks. Come across another ruin. The whole trail, and it's why it's the attraction of this particular hike is the sheer volume of ancient ruins that you come across along the way. So you can see the steps here now. We're going down, and the path winds around, just constantly surrounded by ancient ruins as we're passing along this pathway. This terracing you're looking at down here, this is not the same terracing that we looked at both sides of in the beginning. This is a completely different section, and as you can see, dotted here by ruins around it as well. Now, this one you come across, you can see here, this is clearly old world architecture. The immaculately cut blocks, no mortar, and I don't know what's going on in the middle here, whether this was part of something that was just melted as some heat event, or yeah, I'd be purely guessing at any idea of this. And like, you got to look at these trapezoid insets. You'll see a lot of this around the Cusco and surrounding areas, but this is old world architecture here. Just a close-up of that center attraction there. And you can see even here the infill running along here and along here. So you have the large stones along the outside and smaller infill in the middle. And again, the large lintel with the door. So at some point, to have this doorway here, this middle melted mass here was not part of the feature, because why would you have a doorway coming in when it's blocked off by this? So at some point, something was here that's just been obliterated through incredible heat. There is, again, just to show you some perspective of where that is and the surrounding construction around it. And here, a blend of old and new. There's the old world architecture here and the new Inca style, Inca period construction. Even an attempt here to duplicate the trapezoid insets, but clearly the technology level of these people insufficient to do that. And looking here, whether there's an earthquake or the cataclysmic event, whatever happened, the displacement of those blocks there. But for the best part, the construction of the building holding steady. This one going down level, so whether we're looking at some mud flooding here, and this was a ground level event, it's unclear at this point. And again here, you see from the stones that this at some point was part of the same wall, and through whatever event has just become a melted mass in there. And again, another feature, like what was this originally? What happened to it? Like, you know, some people might say, oh, this is now where they were quarrying material from, but just looking at the edges, the shape, the sizing, you don't quarry like this. This was at some point some kind of feature that's just been obliterated through excessive amounts of heat. Another shot, we're in at ground level here, or ground level being unknown, of course, standing on the edge looking down. So again, are we looking at a metal? So even though we're standing on the top here, was this like part here just the wall, and where we're standing on some kind of mud flooding? My boot here, just for perspective of size. Again, clear indications of some catastrophic heat level event, just turning like maybe a direct hit with some kind of plasma exchange, whether it was a natural event of the sun or plasma weapons of whatever was going on. But this is clearly just destruction. You see this block here survived, something going on here. So this is not unfinished, unquarried work. This is the original, like all of this would have been consistent all the way through, and something has just melted this part of it. Even the steps here, you can see just melted into a blob. That's just a close-up of that block I mentioned here that's still intact. And you can even see here, like in the events, this is definitely not unfinished, unquarried stone. This is the wall that's been obliterated. All right, part of the water feature I mentioned earlier. So this building here is where we just were. So we're looking back now on where we took those photos, these water features, and still working to this day. So the underground complexity of what's going on with these waterways, absolutely amazing. That level of skill and technology required at the time to do this is next level. And again, look at these stonework here. This is old world architecture, not the more modern Inca. Looking down, you see more ruins, and the pathways lead to these. So from here, you could actually walk all the way down to this region, but then you'd have to come back up again. So, in this particular event, it was like pass. Much more modern construction here. We're looking at the adobe mud brick style construction. Maybe at some point in time, this might have been some markets or something specifically on the tourist trail, or just modern repair work. So if you look at the walls here, this is Inca style construction, and then the more modern adobe brick work on top. So someone's attempted to restore that, or it was used for some purpose in more recent times. And again, look at the wall. You can still see the remnants of a wall running through here, and below it's just been obliterated by some level of heat. Just a shot looking across the valley on the other side. This is a zoom-in shot just at the terrain. Breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking, beautiful place to be hiking. The Pisac hike is like, if you're into hiking, it's worth putting on your bucket list. It's definitely something that you want to put on your bucket list if you're a hiker. And this is looking down. We're moving sort of still down towards the valley region now. You can see the path winding along here. You can see a couple of people ahead of me on the path. And look at the edge, like the sheer drop. This is not somewhere you would want to trip and fall. You'd end up in the bottom of this ravine and you'd probably never be found again. And again, like this path, the path here, winding along and up, so terracing. Like, and when you look at the complexity and the sheer volume of what was going on construction-wise, this would have required, the fact just to do this would have meant that your population would have been considerably larger than is accounted for in history. This path along here, when I got to this point, probably approximately just where those people are, or maybe before, just a shot here to show you the sheer drop along the edge, how narrow the path is, and how unfortunate it would be if you did slip or fall off of the edge. And a shot again, town down here in the bottom of the valley. Another shot of the more of an angle shot. You can see the edge here and the town down the bottom. Moving further down the path, again, sheer complexity and volume of the terracing on the other side of the mountain there. And here, better shot of the river too. I mentioned before that line running through is a river. This river runs right through the Sacred Valley. And this is sort of the outskirts of the Pisac town. And like this edge here, you could almost not recognize this at some point in time being a wall, but the cornerstones here showing that exactly it was. And up here, more modern Inca style construction. We're getting a little bit closer to the town now, where this path is winding, by the way. It goes like this. So this is why some of these shots look similar, but we're not zooming in and out. We actually are getting closer. And I did actually injure my knee on this trek, twisted it a little bit. So when I did this hike in 2015, it took me about 2.5 to 3 hours. On this occasion, it took me over 4 hours to complete, and a lot of that in a considerable amount of pain. But as you can imagine, you can't just stop halfway along this and go, oh, okay, I'll give up. So I had to push on, and winding our way down to the center of the town of Pisac. From where I am here, we're looking across. As I mentioned, the path does wind. So this section here, which is further down, we will actually pass through. You can see that, just make out part of the pathway here. So we will be winding our way down to the bottom of this section and then coming back up. Not coming up this path though. This path will take you back up to, like I said, the pathways just run all the way through here. You could spend a week hiking in this area and still not cover all of their options. And here we are, we're actually now in the center of the town of Pisac, looking back up at where we've come from. Much relieved to have finally made it to Pisac to rest my knee and get a much deserved coffee. So here I'm sitting at a coffee shop in the center of the town and just looking up here. This is actually where we just looked at a close-up, a zoom in on, and the center of the town of Pisac, the town square, or the Plaza de Armas. And you can see here, this is more modern style construction in an old world architectural sense. This is what we're capable of today compared to like the cathedrals that you saw that I took in Cusco. And you'll see plenty more of those, by the way, in Mexico. So that is it for Urubamba and for Pisac. And remember, any photos that you like, just shoot me a message on Discord or as a comment on the Hive blog, this post. Drop the time index and what the picture is of, and I will reply or send you that picture. Thanks for joining me for Urubamba and Pisac. Don't forget also, every week, Splinterlands 101 with myself, Matt Clark, and Geotrix, chatting it up, all things Splinterlands, 3 Aussies, just kicking back, talking, with occasional guests on the show as well. The guest episode's called Behind the Avatar. Who is that person behind the avatar that you keep seeing coming up in the ranked battles or tournaments? And there will be Oyente Tambo coming out also in probably about a week. Thanks for joining me. I'm Boba Fett. Peace out.